set a 4:05, and that 4:05 challenge is to get up and I get my coffee made. I get my protein shake made and I do everything and I'm back to get in the shower by 4:05. So if I haven't heard that alarm go off, I'm on schedule, right?
Hold on, you're making coffee and a protein shake in 5 minutes?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
Today's guest is Chris Wilbanks, an Army veteran known in the FAA as Captain COVID. Chris helped lead through one of the most uncertain times in aviation history and now serves as the Vice President of Mission Support at the FAA. In this conversation, we'll talk about leadership when there's no playbook, the role of discipline and habits, and what it really takes to stay steady under pressure. Let's get into it.
This is Kobeck on Air. CEO and co-founder Hisham Jalil built a workplace that people trust. Now he's interviewing other people-first leaders to explore what shapes them.
Well, Mr. Chris Wilbanks, welcome to the podcast, Vice President of Mission Support at the FAA. Tell me about your organization really quickly so we understand what you guys do.
So the FAA is made up of quite a few lines of business. The ATO is one of those lines of business inside. That's the air traffic organization. And it is just that. It is the mission support. We support the operation, both tech ops and air traffic. Whether it's an administrative side, I own the finance for the ATO. So we are I call it the backbone for making sure everything gets done. And again, ultimately supporting the mission, which is air traffic control.
That's awesome. So I was telling you earlier, you don't have a lot on your LinkedIn.
Yes.
So I was trying to learn about your journey. I understand you started in the Army.
So I did. I was in the Army, thoroughly enjoyed it, grew up in it. My dad retired after 25 years in the Army. So I don't have necessarily, I do call the Gulf Coast, Mississippi Gulf Coast home, because when my dad retired, that's where we moved to. That's where my parents' family's from and still is today. But I grew up all over. So when I tell people I'm from the South, they're like, you don't have an accent, right? Because I've lived all over, spent most of my military career at Fort Bragg, and ironically live there now. That's where my house and my wife is now. My wife's an air traffic controller at Raleigh-Durham International. So I'm here in DC, obviously Monday through Friday. But I started, once I got out of the Army, I was an air traffic controller myself. Started at Houston Center, was a controller there. Moved around. I say I've worked every facility from Pensacola, Florida over to Houston. That's where I spent my entire career, the Gulf Coast. Went a little north. I was the ATM, air traffic manager at Birmingham, Alabama for a while, and then back down to Mobile. Left the field in 2019 and went to the command center. Spent a year out at the command center, and then I've been at headquarters ever since. Came to headquarters in 2020. If you remember the 2020 time frame, it was first part of 2020, COVID hit, right? Mm-hmm. And so eye-opener for me and the entire agency. So I didn't really have a full picture of what headquarters was, but I had to learn it fast. Back at that time, Tim Morrell, he was our COO, or our DCOO at the time, eventually became the COO. But I got the call. It was a Friday evening, and it was, Chris, we want you to lead the covert effort. Well, what is that, right? None of us knew. And so it was an opportunity for me. One, I had to learn headquarters quick. I tell people all the time, headquarters is completely different than the field, right? Headquarters is its own beast, right? Understanding the sensitivities, the political side of things, just learning how to navigate the headquarters level is completely different than what people coming from the field are used to. And I had to do this while we're writing a playbook for something that none of us had been through before. None of the world had been through, right? Not just us as the agency. So, Tim said to me one day, he said his defining moment was Hurricane Katrina. And that was what, as he referred to me, put him on the map, right? It was that opportunity for him to show who he was. And it was kind of his defining moment. And he said to me, COVID will be your defining moment. A lot of kudos to Tim giving me the opportunity, the trust to put me in to lead that for the ATO. And, what I learned in that 2 years, you can't learn in 15, 20 years of being at the headquarters level, right? Just who you have to interact with, the relationships you have to build. I'll talk about relationships in a little bit if we get there, but, I remind people all the time it's how we get stuff done. It's relationships, right? It's not authority, but, it gave me an opportunity that, priceless, right? That's really all I can say about it. Great opportunity. We finally got out of COVID. It ended, we started kind of getting back to normal. And I've bounced around from various different positions. I was a director in 3 different positions at headquarters, and then was a deputy vice president for safety and technical training, and then moved over to the vice president of mission support, where I am now.
Okay. And isn't it Mobile, Alabama?
What'd I call it? Mobile?
No,
it
no,
is
I don't
Mobile.
think you did.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
trying
it
to add
is,
a little extra to it. But,
it is Mobile.
well, so were you? And I think someone, Jeff Planty, one of your good friends and former colleagues,
coach and mentor as well.
excellent human, told me that your nickname was Captain or maybe it was your official title was Captain COVID.
So Captain COVID, yeah. So it was on a call one day. We used to do the COO call, and it was a call that we did on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And it was putting out information, right? I mean, we had everything from new policies, new regulations, rules all over the country, trying to manage 313 different facilities across the country in a world that we've never been down before, right? So trying to do that, Tim was adamant we need to share information, talk about what's going on, give updates. And so we used to do these COO calls. Out of the blue on a call one day, Tim says, Captain COVID. Boy, did that stick. I can't tell you the amount of text messages I got, the amount of Teams messages I got, and I have today still referred to by various people, Captain COVID. I come back from Raleigh on a trip one time, and I had something that I was bringing to a coworker from my wife. And in that bag, I know now, but in that bag, she had slipped in a plaque that goes on my desk, and it said Captain COVID. And so I had left my office. I come back into my office, and there's this placard on my desk that says Captain COVID. And, had the Captain America shield on it and whatnot. So anyway, yeah, it is stuck. What's interesting, we're in day 36 of the shutdown. We've been doing COO calls, and Frank has had what he refers to as a dynamic duo. Myself and Rhonda Hayes, she's a vice president for flight ops, have been putting out the information on the calls. She'll ask the questions, and that's kind of the format we use, and I'll answer the questions. And so there's been quite a few going around. What are we going to call you now? And there's been anything from Lord of the Laps to, Captain Shutdown, the Shutdown Sheriff. They've all had these names they're passing around on what they're going to land on. So
Shutdown Sheriff.
I don't know what name I will be after the shutdown is over, but nothing will top Captain COVID.
Shutdown Sheriff has a nice ring to it.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jen?
Love it.
Thank you. Well, so it's funny, COVID, it keeps coming up as a reminder recently. For example, the office we're in, we, unfortunately signed the lease literally like 3 weeks, something like that, before March 11th of 2020, before, the world ended, it felt like. And but what's interesting is you fast forward to 2025, and it's you kind of forget about it a little bit, right? Because so many things have happened. But let's not forget, that was, when you really think about, especially the beginning, like, just everything stopped, all air travel, everything stopped. Like the whole world stopped. You had to wipe down groceries. Like it was a really weird time, right? And crazy, and people died. And it was just like, when you think about it, we really didn't know what was going to happen next.
Yeah.
So, given you were in that situation, it never happened before. So how did you manage with something that there's no playbook for? Like, how did you create a playbook?
You created it day in and day out. You created it by living it. And so, Tim actually said one day, he said, and again, I appreciated it. I try to stay humble, but Tim said, if you ever want a playbook written, ask Chris, he'll write it for you. Right. And so I took that as a huge compliment coming from Tim himself. But his point was, we didn't have it. We didn't have a plan. We've got contingency plans for everything that we do in this agency. We lose a facility, we lose radar, we lose, comms, right? We have contingency plans. There was no contingency plan for this. So a lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes were made, but I tell people all the time, mistakes is what makes you successful, right? Is learning from those mistakes, building on those, making sure you don't do them again and correcting as you go. But, we did. And I didn't do this on my own, right? Phenomenal people around us. What the administrator at the time had done was set up what he called the incident management team. It was called the IMT, and it was a representative from each line of business that for the first, it was probably the first year, we met 7 days a week, Saturday, Sunday. We were on calls, the IMT, all the different respected organizations that were impacted by this, which was the whole agency, and really centered around the focus, which was the 24 operations that's still happening in the field, right? Our technicians and our air traffic controllers still were going to work 24 hours a day. How do we keep that running, right? All the administrative stuff can come behind that. And so that's where the focus was. And so, again, I talked about, relationships and influence. One, I had no authority in the IMT. I was a brand new director, had been a director for about 3 months at the headquarters level when I get thrust into this position. Nobody knew me. So I had to build those relationships and trust and that influence over time. And over that year and a half to 2 years, I've still got great friends that I met during COVID from working in the IMT that I built that trust and built that relationship with, that I can call on now to get things taken care of. They know they can call on me. So again, just one of the many benefits. I tell people all the time, you always try to find a silver lining in something. And if there was a silver lining in COVID, we had to figure out how to do things differently. Training is one of the examples, right? We trained in person. So, we sent people to the academy. We had to come up with ways to be able to do it in a COVID environment where people have to be 6 feet apart, where you can't have, people co-located in rooms. We set up for the first time ever, we did a virtual training, right? We had a course, our air traffic basics course. We did that online and was successful. Our success virtually is the same success that we had when we were doing it in person. So we proved that we could do that. We opened up 2 different training places, one in Nashville, New Hampshire, and one in SoCal, because we could not reopen the academy. We had some space there, and it was really to get training going back at a slow trickle to get us kind of started. So it was things like that again, challenging people to think different than we've always thought before and find a way to accomplish it. And we did. We did. So a lot of great lessons. Zoom is a perfect example, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, wow. Who would have thought of Zoom and Team prior to COVID?
Yeah.
Now it's a part of our everyday life, right? Now you find people getting upset. Why can't we just jump on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
No, we'll see you in person, right? Come in here and let's talk about this. So
yeah. Let me go back a second to when you were. So what did you do in the Army, and how old were you when you were in the Army?
So I went in the Army when I was 22.
Okay.
Went in the Army, started in the infantry, and then I reclassed into air traffic. So spent a total of 8 years then, spent 5 years in the infantry, and then reclassed into air traffic the last part of my times.
What drew you into air traffic or FAA, that kind of stuff, aviation?
I tell people, again, how did you get where you are, Chris? Happenstance. Yeah. I knew nothing about air traffic control. I grew up in the military. So I loved the military, and what was exciting to me about the military, first thing I wanted to do was go to airborne school, which I got that. I was able to do the things that I saw my older brother, who's 6 years older than me, did in the Army, what my dad did. So those were the things that were exciting to me. It was time, opportunity to re-enlist. Air traffic came up. I called my dad. I was like, I don't even know what air traffic control does. Like, what should I try this? Right? They want to send me to Fort Rucker for this training. And so long story short, I went to Fort Rucker. I was there for probably about the first month, and I felt like I was in college. It's schoolwork, it's bookwork, it's learning, it's studying. And again, so I went to my first sergeant. I said, this is not for me. I would just like to go back to an infantry. And he said to me, give it an opportunity. When you get into the hands-on, if you still don't like it, he said, we'll talk to the sergeant major and we'll get you back into the infantry. Thankful I had somebody that said that to me, or I would be where I'm sitting right now having this conversation with you. But again, no plan. I didn't know aviation. I didn't grow up. I love airplanes. I love aviation, but I didn't have this dream to be in it. And so fast forward, I was in the Army, got out of the Army, got an opportunity to work for DOD, which is DOW now, but DOD at the time. And worked for about 3 years as a controller for Department of Defense at the time, and then got hired into the FAA. Started at Houston Center. So that was in 2005 that I got hired in. So,
do you know Maurice Hoffman? I think you met him.
I think I do.
Yeah.
I think I do. Yes.
Former controller. He's one of these people that, as I got to know him, well, actually, even when I started working with the FAA, which is in 2005, I didn't know it was a job. Like, I kind of knew, it was something in the movies, but you didn't know it was a good paying job, it was a stable job, it was an interesting job. Mm-hmm. I don't know, just didn't know about it. And I was just telling my cousin, who's like 22, who doesn't know what he wants to do. He's very smart, likes aviation, doesn't want to be a pilot necessarily. I'm like, great, go on the other side. Yeah. Give it a shot.
I'm pretty sure they brought warrant officers back into air traffic in the Army. Again, last time I checked, I think they had, but a lot of opportunity there. I do tell people all the time, if your goal is to be an air traffic controller, I would say the Air Force is closely aligned to what we do in the agency. In the Army, you're going to control a bunch of helicopters, right? If you control it all, right? The Army's focus is you're a soldier first, right? So you do a lot of time in the field, and that's kind of where your primary focus and mission is. But, we've got very few fixed wings in the Army, your Citations, a couple of King Airs. But for the most part, if you really want to control the jets and the big boys, it's going to be in the Air Force. So,
okay. Just on that theme a little bit, what is, just if you hear about, again, you see it in the movies, It's obviously in the news, sometimes for bad reasons, but people don't really know what air traffic controllers do. I think they have a sense, but what is like one or two things you're like, man, I just wish that people knew this is actually how it works, or this is exactly what these folks do. It's not what you think.
So everybody obviously thinks when you say air traffic control, you're the guy with two flashlight sticks and you're
like
bringing in the airplane, right? So obviously air traffic control is much more dynamic than that. You've got different environments. You've got the en route environment, which I try to explain very simplistically, is that you're transversing the higher altitudes, right? Think about 18,000 feet and above, going across from LA to New York. You're working all the center side of things. Most people, when they think air traffic control, they think about the tower, which is every airport that we have, that, our major airports, you have a control tower. There are people up there in that control
with binoculars,
tower,
right?
With binoculars, right? In some sense, because you do have towers that are sometimes a mile away from the approach end of a runway. So, but those are the folks that are clearing people to take off, clearing people to land, moving the aircraft around on the airport environment. And then you have what would be easily defined as maybe your mid-level radar. So that's going to be your approach control. So when they leave the tower environment, they're going to talk to a radar controller who is going to give them instruction and then hand them off to the en route for them to just continue on their flight. They'll climb to altitude, anywhere from 30 to 39, 40, 43,000 feet. And they're going to transverse, and then they will descend back down and do that same thing in reverse order. They'll talk to an approach controller, and then they will talk to, the tower controller to clear them to land. So, it's a great job. It's interesting. My son and my nephew, I'm flying both of them up for Thanksgiving. They're going to come up and spend the week with me. But both of them, my nephew more wants to be an air traffic controller. Like he's looked into it already. I mean, he's loves aviation. My son mentioned to me he's thinking about it. He wants to be a pilot. And I said, a pilot of what? He wants to fly jets, right? He's 15, so I'm sure that sounds cool to him. I am actually trying to convince him to go into the Army as a warrant officer, fly helicopters.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, we'll see where that lands. So, my oldest son is past that stage already. He's actually doing pretty well. He's the starting kicker for University of Southern Mississippi.
No way.
So he plays football his freshman year. So
wow, really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So you have two kids?
2 boys and a girl.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old is your
daughter's the youngest? She's 13.
Okay.
Going on 22.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's my daughter's 21 months. She's going on like 80.
Yeah.
I don't know. She's very mature, sort of for a baby. So you are big into running, working out, that kind of stuff.
Love running. What's interesting is, it's part of, I have what I consider my core anchors for leadership, like what I focus on, that is in there. Discipline, habits, and fitness is in there. I either am in the gym or I run every single morning. What I have found is over the last couple of years, I have leaned more towards running and thoroughly enjoy it. My wife thinks I'm crazy. Like what is fun about going out to run 15 miles? But I do. I enjoy it. It is a, people talk all the time about a runner's high. I can't really explain it. If you've ever had it, you will know exactly what it is. Had it this morning. I was out running. I text Jeff and I said, just set a PR on the 10K this morning. Didn't go out to set a personal record on that 10K. Everything was just feeling right. My breathing was right. It was just moving. I looked down and I'm like, man, I'm about 15 seconds ahead of my normal pace in what I run here. And so, I decided just to continue getting after it and ended up coming in probably 15 seconds faster than what I typically run that, 6.2 miles in. But to me, it's my outlet. I just talked today, I had a leadership call with all my folks, and there's just a couple of things I reminded them. One, you can't take care of your people if you don't take care of yourself. Focus on yourself, right? And so make sure, we spend so much time worrying about, obviously, is everybody else okay? Is the mission working? But if you're not taking care of yourself, you cannot take care of anyone else. So I said, make sure you guys are looking in the mirror, asking yourself, am I good? And I brought up, to take a walk in the office. If you were close to the mall, go out and walk around. If you're in the DC area, do something. If it's stepping away for 5 minutes and taking a couple of deep breaths, whatever it may do. For me, it's the gym. Occasionally I'll go out in the evening and run because I tend to want to go run when I get bored. And so, if I'm sitting at the house and I'm like, I don't have anything to do, I'm going to just go out and run. So, but I call myself a connoisseur or a disciple of discipline. I love discipline. I'm fascinated with discipline. Read a lot of books on discipline and leadership. And, look, I'm no master at it. I tell people all the time, one, you can't master discipline. You can't master leadership. You can continue to learn. And that's what I strive to do every single day, is to learn something more today than what I knew yesterday. But I do enjoy reading the books. And there are some phenomenal, phenomenal people out there. One, the discipline, two, the leadership, and just the skills that they have. Right. So, that for me, I put a big focus on the fitness side and the habits. Back in January, a big shout out to Jeff Planty again. Every January I go into, I don't like New Year's resolutions, but I always try to find something to start the new year off that challenges myself, that is a challenge to me. Last January before last, I said, I'm going to run 5 miles every single day for 31 straight days. That's what I'm going to do, right? Even though on the days you don't feel like running 5 miles, I made myself get up and do it because I said I was going to do it. Well, this past January, I said, Jeff, let's do the hard 75. If anybody knows what the hard 75 is, you can look it up. I highly, highly suggest it. It's not really about the physical component of it. It does get physical, but it is about the habits. It's about the mental piece of it, right? I mean, it is about, you have to do everything for 75 straight days. It doesn't matter if it's rain. It doesn't matter, rain, shine, whatever the weather is. Last year, I spent 3 weeks out in Oklahoma, 3 weeks in a row, in 3 ice storms. And I was out there because of the ice storms, and we had to continue to cancel what I was. So part of the hard 75, you have to do one 45-minute workout outside, and the other one can be inside.
At the same day? Two a day?
Yeah. One has to be outside, and one can be inside. Okay. And so anyway, -5 degrees, the wind blowing, 20 miles an hour in Oklahoma, which it's always, wind blowing out there. Mm-hmm. I was out doing my outside workout, right? Bundled up, had ice chips building up on my lips. But again, we're like, you're an idiot, right? Well, maybe so. But again, it was the fact that it was something I had to do. And it's simple things too. You have to take a progress picture every single day. If you miss one of the daily tasks, you start over. One of them. So again, that's what it's about. It's about just making yourself, I'm going to do this. And, there's many books out there about habits, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, again, that's how people start smoking. It becomes a habit, right? And so you can start good habits just like you start bad habits, right? So stick with it, do it over and over. I was not a book reader. I always listen to Audible because I drive a lot. And so one of the things you have to do for the 75 hard is you have to read books. You cannot listen to Audible. You have to read 10 pages at a minimum a day. Okay. And it's 10 pages on self-help, leadership, some kind of self-development is what you have to read. So again, never a reader before. I always listen to Audible. Well, I had to do it. I've continued to do it. I go to my office, in the office every morning at 5 o'clock. First thing I do is I read. I do my reading, do a couple of emails, and then I hit the gym or out on a run before I start my day. I do that for a couple of reasons. One, because it's part of my routine, but two, it's a part of the day that I can protect. When my day starts at 8:30, that's our first ops call. I no longer control my day. I don't control my calendar. Things pop up, right? We're tactically working different things. And so for me, protecting that time that I get up at 4, I'm in the office at 5 until usually about 7:30, unless it is an absolute emergency, I'm untouchable. People know how to get in touch with me if they need to, but I just protect that time, because if not, you're never going to get it, right? That's why I don't work out in the afternoon, because sometimes afternoon's 5:30, sometimes it's 7:30, right? So yeah.
I mean, there's definitely a parallel to leadership, but what is one thing? Because there's the part of whether it's too cold or you're just not feeling it. I mean, what are your methods, or, how do you get past that part? How do you force yourself to do something? Because I think that's where everybody fails. You can do the first 3 days and then you're like, I'm going to take the day off, and then it changes, right?
That's the discipline. Again, I tell people all the time, there's a difference in discipline and motivation. I'm not motivated every day. The clock goes off at 4 o'clock. There are some days I'm not motivated. I'm motivated to hit snooze, but I don't do it, right? The discipline kicks in and my feet hit the floor. It's almost a challenge to myself. It's funny. I get up, same routine. My wife picks on me all the time. I'm so routine. I get dressed the same way every day, right? The belt goes on at a certain time. The shoes go on, this shoe gets tied, that shoe gets tied. And, but I have a 4 o'clock alarm that goes off, and then I set a 4:05, and that 4:05 challenge is to get up, and I get my coffee made. I get my protein shake made, and I do everything, and I'm back to get in the shower by 4:05. So if I haven't heard that alarm go off, I'm on schedule, right?
Hold on, you're making coffee and a protein shake in 5 minutes?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I got a Keurig, right? I just hit the button, the Keurig pours. I'm putting my protein shake in there, and I don't do blender and all the strawberries and everything. It's powder, goes in there, mix it with my pre-workout. and then I'm off to the shower. But I got 5 minutes to do that, right? So
That's interesting. I guess you were a good air traffic controller, right?
Right,
Got
yeah.
the time spacing and everything. So tell me how you think this kind of translates to leadership. Does it affect how you lead? What is it you then also expected out of people? And then how do you kind of work around the fact that not everybody can be as disciplined as you are?
So expect would be a strong word. I hate to place my expectations on anyone when it comes to what I choose to do, right? I have a expectation of work that I expect people to produce, but I don't want to say that everyone has to do the same thing I do to produce the level of work that I would expect, right? So, but I do encourage it. I bring it up all the time. Most people that I work with know my habits and know what I like to do. They know that I enjoy running, enjoy working out. I joke and tell people that's why I don't have friends. Jeff was crazy enough to become a friend of me, but he's just as crazy as I am and does what I do. My wife says, nobody wants to go run 35 miles. So that's why you don't have friends, right? They think that's what you do for fun, right? So, but I do encourage it. I just today on the call, get out, go walk, whether it's walking your dog, whether it's running, it's something, right? Find something that works for you. Not the same thing doesn't work for everyone, but I absolutely believe if I miss a morning workout, whether it's a run, the gym, whatever, I don't want to say my coworkers can tell. No one's brought it to my attention. Maybe after they hear this, they might, but my wife can tell.
Mm-hmm.
There's been times that I've missed the gym in the morning for various reasons. My wife's like, you need to go to the gym. You're in a bad mood, right? And so it does. It does impact you. It's the best way to start your day, right? I feel sluggish if I miss the gym, miss my workout in the morning, miss my routine. So I absolutely would say it correlates to how your day goes.
Yeah, I have a morning routine too. Jen, maybe you do too, but I think everyone has some, right? And some obviously are maybe healthier and more disciplined. But I do think having your mind clear in the morning, being ready to challenge the day is really important, especially when you're a leader because you're taking care of other people. Yeah. And it's one thing just to worry about, oh, what am I going to eat for lunch, but you got a whole group of people, a lot of people. So you were a controller, and then obviously you worked your way up into management, and then part of that is leadership, obviously. But what do you think? Why did that happen? Did you immediately say, "Oh, I love this"? Going from the individual work to caring about the rest of the team and carrying them up.
So that's a great question. I reflect sometimes. Just how did I get where I am? Right. What made me who I am? I try to do that every so often. Again, it keeps you grounded, but, I'm one that this sounds terrible, but I'm one that gets bored easy. Right. And so, growing up in the military, another reason why I probably don't have lifelong childhood friends, I moved around every 2-3 years, right? My dad was in the Army. And so that was normal to me. You're here and you're moving on doing something different. I don't want to say it's an absolute fact, but I tell people all the time, 2 to 3 years in a position, you've effectuated all the change you're going to effectuate, right? People become stale. They become stagnant in positions. So look for that next opportunity. I don't want to be that person that sits in a position that I think I'm still making change, yet I'm actually going the opposite direction, I enjoy challenges. I look for challenges both, in my personal life, and I look for challenges at work because that's what's going to make you grow, right? I know I didn't come up with the idea, but obviously, stay in your comfort zone. You're never going to grow, right? You've got to get uncomfortable to grow. And so challenging, taking on a new position, right? I did not know much about mission support from the position that I'm in now before I took this role. What I knew about mission support, I was always on the receiving side of that support, at whether I was a manager in the field, whether I was in a different service unit, that's the perspective I had for mission support. I was in the role probably about 2 months and I just said, wow, you guys are amazing. Everything that you guys touch, everything that you put your hands on, I had no idea. It was one of those, air traffic managers that knew that if I sent it here, it got done. I don't know who did it and how it got done. And you sometimes just take that for granted, right? I now, sitting in the role I'm in, realize the amount of support that comes from the teams that we have to keep everything going. So, but again, I've never shied away when I'm asked to move to a different position. Sometimes it's easier to say, I'm fine where I'm at, right? I'm comfortable. I know my role. Not only am I comfortable in the leadership role, but I'm technically sound in the job that I'm doing. Now that's a challenge for people. You move into a new role, you're not the technical expert, but I promise you, you don't have to be, right? There is no one that hired me for my technical capability in the role that I'm in right now. And I try to remind people all the time, every role that you go up, one, your lens gets much bigger, but two, your technical skill is less and less relied on, right? You need to be the leader. It's my first coaching to any team manager going into a group manager is, you need to focus on leading the team. You're not the doer anymore, right? And that gets bigger and bigger. Each role, you go to the director, you go to the deputy vice president, the vice president role, much, much bigger. But, I enjoy learning. I enjoy every aspect of leadership. I said it earlier. It's not a skill that I will ever master. I don't know that anyone can master leadership, but it is something that I continually work at. I tell people all the time, if there's a mistake to be made, I've made it. That's why I'm who I am today. My first supervisor job was in 2011, 2012 timeframe. I sometimes reflect back to what I thought leading was then to where I'm at now, and night and day.
Tell me about that.
Night and day. Again, you just grow and you learn and you learn.
Yeah.
And so, it was one, I go back to that role. You think leadership is about authority. It's absolutely not. That is the number one piece of advice I give to everybody. It's because you can doesn't mean you have to. Right? Because you have the authority doesn't mean you have to execute it, right? You will get more through influence. If you can get folks to buy into what you're doing and not forcing them to do it, it's going to pay dividends down the road. And again, so knowing that you don't have to lead with authority, that's one of the lessons that I've carried with me. I'll share a story I hadn't shared with many people. One, I'm not really proud of it, but my ex-wife probably doesn't know this today. But there's something that my ex-wife said to me one day that has resonated with me and stuck with me. And I reflect on it quite a bit. I was on the phone. We were at our house at the time in Louisiana, and I got off the phone. And I think still to this day, I think I was on the phone with Verizon or somebody. She looks at me and she says, "If I was on the other end of that phone, I would have hung up on you."
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, "Why would you have hung up on me?" She's like, "The way you talk to people, you talk down to people. Oh, wow. You were berating them." And I'm thinking to myself, I was just talking, right? But that stuck with me. And I never wanted to be that person that one, talks down to anyone, or two, berates anyone. And so, I jokingly tell people all the time in just conversation, my ex-wife has no idea the impact in my leadership that she had just by that one comment. It was just something that stuck with me, right? It goes to one of my core anchors about just being humble. I preach it to my son all the time. The one I mentioned, he's a, college football player, freshman, having a great year already. And so super proud of the guy. But one of the things I tell him all the time is, keep your failures and your successes close. It'll keep you humble. He's very humble, super proud of the guy. I could brag on him for the next 2 hours. Just listened to an interview he done, yesterday. And I thought to myself, wow, how mature. He's 18 years old. And I'm listening to him do this interview with the local station there in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And I was thoroughly impressed.
That's awesome.
But anyway, it's about staying humble, in a crisis. Your folks don't want a hero. They want someone that's humble. So, stay human, be human. Let them know that you're vulnerable too. I shared today in the call that one, we all think we're superhuman. We all think that we have all the answers, and we all think that this is our job to lead through this, but we feel it too. Everyone on this call, and it was just my directors, you got stresses. And oh, by the way, not only do you have stresses at work that we all see, we don't know what you're dealing with at home, right? So take that time for yourself, but also push that aside to your employees as well.
So you said something interesting, keeping your successes and your failures close. What did you mean by that?
So just again, because you can't always lean on your successes. Your successes, if you forget your failures, you're going to lose sight of being a humble person, right? And so to me, it's keeping those failures close to those successes. Remember, you make mistakes. Remember, you fail, and you're going to fail again, and that's okay. That's what makes the successes, is those failures.
It's very insightful. And I mean, Leaders fail all the time. I'm always failing on a daily basis. I mean, honestly, I don't know how you can only succeed. And actually, how would you know unless you failed?
Correct.
Right? That's how you learn. I think that's the other thing is, as a leader, I'm sure you do it. I mean, certainly it's different when you're talking about safety, but within the environment of just work, creating a safe environment where people can fail so that they can get better and learn. Right.
Correct.
I mean, that's really important, I think.
That's super important. That's about empowering people, right? Empowering people, understanding when you empower someone, you are giving them the leeway to do it their way, right? There's a difference between delegation and empowerment. People, as a leader, I delegate things that I don't necessarily care about or have the passion for or care how it gets done. It just needs to get done. The true learning opportunity is when you empower someone. I'm telling you what I need done, and I'm giving you the space to figure out how to get it done. Not this is the way Chris wants it done, and this is the way you're going to do it, right? That's hard. That was hard for me. I'm a doer. I've always said anybody can sit at the top and give orders, and I don't want to be that person, right? I want to be involved. But another learning lesson for me is my involvement sometimes makes folks think that I don't trust them, right? And that's the last thing you want is for your leadership team to think that you're micromanaging them and thinking you don't trust them. So, I've had worked with my coach to kind of coach me through. It's okay, to want to be involved, but you've got to give people that space to make mistakes, right? Again, you don't want to give someone opportunity to make a mistake where there's life or death, right? You have to find that right opportunity, but let them make those mistakes. Let them do it on your own. I'm terrible with my kids, right? I just assume do it because I can get it done like that. But again, what am I teaching my kids? I'm teaching them somebody's always going to do it for them. So again, it's that opportunity for me to say, all right, I might not do it that way, but it's okay. Because what's the old saying? There's, many ways to skin a cat, right? Let them figure it out and do it.
Yeah, that's great. You wanted to touch on relationships, and I found that interesting. Just to add a little bit, today's world, everybody's texting, everything's online. People prefer to text than call. Sometimes I'm like that too, honestly. People, we have this beautiful office. Nobody comes to the office. You do. Thank you, Jen. But nobody else really comes in. They don't want to see each other. It's not, well, I don't want to say that. But that desire does not seem to outweigh whatever's keeping them away. So relationships actually matter even more, but they're hard. The humans are meant to be together.
Correct.
Literally in person together. And think of a company. It's a group of people. Organization. It's all about being together. And so how do you do that? How did you do that during COVID, but also now? Like, how do you deal with that? And you guys are back, but it's not really. It's such a big organization. It's across the whole country. Yeah. So how do you keep people connected?
So I think during COVID, obviously we were forced into it. So we just had to figure our way out, right? And then we made the slow transition of finally getting back into that build. And I do prefer the interaction in person. I think there's value there, but I don't want to discredit the value of Zoom that it brought to us as well too, right? There's a convenience factor. I've got directors in different parts of the country. I've got them in Oklahoma. I've got them in each of the service centers. So there's not always that opportunity to connect in person, but when you have that opportunity, I think you should leverage it. We had a all managers call today. I asked Jadira, my senior advisor, hey, when you send this out, tell all directors I want them in person so that we're all sitting in the same conference room talking to the rest of our managers. One, I think it presents well, right? Mm-hmm. You're showing that team cohesion. And number two, it's just opportunity. I praised the team today. One of the highlights to me on the call, as I'm watching all the directors go around and have the conversations, I'm seeing them give credit to other directors. And that's huge, right? We are an organization that just combined two organizations, right? We were mission support and management services now combined into one organization. So super large organization. So these are directors that we're not used to being peers in the same organization working together. What I've been thoroughly impressed is how they have adopted so quickly into this and got into working together. I watched them today, and so I complimented them on that. But again, part of that is because of the relationships they have built. It's the simple way I put it is, if I pick up the phone and call you and you know who I am, you're more likely to do what I ask you to do or help me out than if I'm a random person is you're like, nope, I don't have time for that, right? So how do you do that? You do that by meeting people. You do that by making, relationships. But the biggest thing about a relationship, it's not about what you give me. It's about what you put into the relationship, right? So it's a two-way streak, right? You can't always look to make a withdrawal, right? You got to make deposits into that relationship too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I go out of my way to try to connect with people and meet with them, go to lunch, go to coffee. Even, I mean, if they're not local, a virtual call. If there's like some new partnership with a new company, I try to do that. Worst case is you make a new friend or a new connection. Best case is you do have, like you're saying, sort of a different level between both of you, both ways of priority almost, right? Like, hey, sometimes we, as a company, we join a team of other companies bidding on something. I'll try to meet people because, well, there's 5 other companies or 8 other companies. I want to stand out, but I also want to get to know you. So that if I call you or you call me, like we already skipped that awkward part.
Exactly.
That now is awkward because now we want something.
Yes.
Let's just meet. And then if we want something, it's just based on our relationship. So yeah, I believe a lot in it, but I do think people have to go out of their way and do it. I guess in a virtual world, you can call people, you can do it Zoom. There's ways around it, but I don't think I haven't seen people take as much effort to do it. I assume it used to happen a lot more way back in like the, what's the show with John Hamm where it was about advertising and all that. It's all about like lunches and meetings and
Office Space, right?
Mad Men?
Mad Men, yeah. I mean, that's probably over the top, right? But it was all about who you knew, but not because you're getting something, but because you have to have that relationship. Otherwise, no one's going to talk to you.
Correct.
So I don't know. In today's world, I don't know how people do it, honestly.
Yeah,
or what the future generation is going to do.
You got to make an intentional effort to do it. You got to make an intentional effort, but also recognizing society is different today than it was when you and I were growing up, right? I mean, gosh, dog, I look back and think, man, if we had cell phones when I was in high school, right? You know, probably still be trying to get some of those pictures away. But, you know, the whole point is society has evolved, but what we can't forget is the basic needs and the basic things that require and are needed for society to function. And I think we forget that sometimes. And we do live in a fast-paced world. We live in an instant gratification, the text messaging, which ironically, I don't think kids text anymore, right? I'll text my son and it'll be 3 days later before he reads it because he's got his red messages on. I can see when he reads it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Now we'll chat in that time, but he doesn't read the text messages because they communicate somewhere else, whether it's Snapchat or TikTok or wherever it is that they choose to communicate. But anyway, so, I do understand that we have to evolve. And again, that's back to mastering the skill of leadership. You can't, because leadership is constantly evolving, right? It's much different leading people in this generation than it was 15 years ago, than it was 20 years ago, right? So if you're not adapting and evolving in your leadership ability and skills, you're gonna be passed by.
Yeah, and now, besides the social media or whatever, the technology, there's technology, there's AI coming up, right? And so now we have to lead people without, again, not knowing where things are going, but to help protect them and create a safe space and to keep jobs for people, because who knows what that's going to look like.
Well, we could do it
a whole separate. I know.
AI, I'm a huge fan of it. I think there's great opportunity there. But to your point, I think, again, people fear the unknown, and they think that AI is, around to replace them, right? As opposed to embracing AI, how it can be introduced into how can it make me more efficient? How can I do my job better with it, right? Don't look at it as it's here to replace you. It's here to help you. It's here to be an assist to you, right? So huge fan of AI. And I think we as society has been slow to adapt it. And again, for that fear, I think out there, but definitely looking forward to seeing what can be introduced and what can be done with it.
Yeah, I saw there's like a robot named Alice, I think, that some company's selling. It's kind of like the Tesla robot, but it will cook for you and clean for you, and it's like $20,000. I was like, it's like a car payment over. I mean, can we finance that? Yeah. But hopefully it doesn't choke you in the middle of the night. I guess that would be the downside. But no, I agree. But it's just. But I guess where I'm going with that is no one knows the future, right? And so it's always going to be some new uncertainty or threat, or it could be perceived threat. It could be a real threat. And that's the challenge of leadership, because we kind of have to put ourselves out there and essentially take the bullets or be the steady person in that, even though when we don't know what's going to happen, right? Because we can't all just freak out at the same time. And that's hard to do, because you gotta think like, okay, how do we ground ourselves in something that we're going to be okay, even when we don't know, right? Because I think on some level we will be okay. Just how okay, that's the part we never know.
You talk about the unknown and again, talking about kind of what I try to rely on. I'm not saying I'm perfect at anything I do, but it's a communication. I communicate early and I communicate often. And I do that for two reasons. One is the connection, right? It's a connection with people, even though I don't always have the right answer. Sometimes I don't have the answer at all, but it's that connection because silence creates fear, right? A leader that connects builds trust, but if you don't, the silence, it creates fear. And so again, I do not have all the answers of how this shutdown will play out, end. I don't know when it will end. But again, making sure that I'm connecting with my folks to let them know and tell them everything that I know. I'm transparent to the point I can be transparent. I don't, I'm not one of those, that leads through knowledge is power. There's a lot of people out there, right? If I have knowledge you don't have, I have power over you, right? And so again, a lot of people use that in a negative way. If I know it, I've been accused of, Chris, you say too much. Well, that's fine, right? I'd rather say too much than not enough. What I don't ever want anyone to be able to come back and say, I didn't know that was coming. I didn't have a say in that. I wasn't a part of that. Because ultimately, when you're trying to move something big, if you don't have buy-in, again, you're never going to please 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So if I can please 50%, I've probably done my job, because you're always going to have half the group that you're trying to change. You're going to have half them that want something different. But I want everybody to have that voice. Doesn't mean I'm going to change my mind. Doesn't mean I'm going to change my decision. But you had an opportunity to be heard. And that's what most people want. And so, it's about communicating, getting that feedback, listening to people, and that builds the trust, right? So
absolutely. I mean, I 100% believe that, and I think I do it. I don't know. I guess you feel like you might have to say yes.
Come on, Jen.
I knew you were going to identify with that.
Well, which is that I just talk a lot and I don't know anything. But no, I actually, that's my thing is, if you don't know something, it's actually better to tell people you don't know it and make people part of the process. Because I mean, one is you may never know something, for one, or you don't know when you might know the answer.
Correct.
And in that time frame, I mean, you could build that trust. You can let people know so that they're processing with you. A lot of times in leadership, you get an opportunity to know something ahead of time. You have a chance to process it. Think about communication. Think about the what ifs. Then you just drop it on people.
Yeah.
And then wonder, how come they're reacting this way? It's well, because they didn't have the opportunity you just had for 2 months thinking about it, right?
Correct.
And so I'm not saying every time you don't know something or something new comes up, you immediately tell people. But there is that space where you get a second to think about it and say, yeah, I want to share this because I want to be transparent and let you know what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's my thing. I don't know. It hasn't really bit me in the ass yet, I guess. I mean, because I don't see the downside. I mean, I guess somebody out there could say, well, how come they don't know? But I mean, how can anyone know everything? Right?
Correct.
So no, I completely believe in that.
To your point, though, I think there's more of a downside of not sharing than oversharing.
Yeah.
And so to your, not, it hadn't bit you yet, but completely agree. I think that is the way to go. You always throw those caveats out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Look, what I'm sharing with you guys is one, either my perspective, my opinion, or no, this could evolve. This is where it stands today. But understand, by the time we finish this conversation, it might be different, right? That is the case when you're in a situation like we are with the government shutdown. Oh, by the way, when we were in COVID, what I say today could be completely different tomorrow. And I will own that. That's okay. But I want you to know as quick as I know something. There are times you hold information because, again, putting out too much information without an answer causes anxiety for no reason, right? So you do as a leader have to limit kind of what you put out there, because there's the last thing you want to do when you have a workforce that's already stressed and full of anxiety is add more for no reason if there's no value there, right?
Yeah.
And so again, you do have to kind of limit that a little bit.
And context. I mean, I think providing context. If you don't have the context, but you have something maybe not great, that's probably not a great thing, because it's okay to have bad news, but you have to have the context. Why is this happening? Why am I even telling you? Completely agree with you. Yeah. Now, I have a couple questions here that I'm trying to create a common thread across the different podcasts. If you, Chris, would go back and give your younger self one piece of advice or two, what would that be? It's not a trick question.
No, it's not a trick question, but
it's hard, right?
I talked about earlier all the mistakes I made that got me here, right? And so I've got a lot to process on all the mistakes that I made.
You need AI to process
what
that
I would
for you.
change, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I absolutely would do things differently. But again, hindsight's 2020. What I know now, there are certain situations I would do differently, because what I wouldn't do is different, that I'm not where I'm at now, because I am happy in life. I am happy at where we all make mistakes, right? But those mistakes have made me where I'm at today.
Mhm.
So I don't know that I would change anything that would ultimately change my path of where I'm at, but definitely mistakes along the way that I would probably do different, because now I know the outcome. But, 3 beautiful kids, love my wife, love my job, you know, enjoy everything. So I don't know that I would change anything that would change my path.
That's very insightful. I think it's a great answer. That's kind of my answer. We have a lot in common.
Yeah.
Well, I think, I mean, it's there's some, when you first look at it on surface, you're like, oh, I remember that thing I should have not done. But you could, but it's almost like Back to the Future. If you go back and change it, then your future will be different.
Exactly.
You're not born.
Yep.
But I mean, because you have to go through things to be who you are.
Yep.
So if you were to go back in a time machine and tell yourself, don't do that, then you won't go through that and then learn those lessons.
Exactly.
Right. In a way, right? And you kind of have to experience lows to enjoy highs. And it's just part of life, unfortunately. It's never perfect.
You do. It goes back to your parents saying to you, trust me, you don't want to do that. Again, I'm in that same situation now. I have kids that I stop myself from saying, I know the outcome, don't do that.
Yeah.
But I also understand that if I don't let them do it, they're not going to learn themselves. If I keep them from making every mistake, then they're never going to learn anything. At some point, those mistakes are going to catch up. So you do have to let people fail. And that sounds terrible. You don't let people fail to a point where it's, a detriment to them, but that's how they grow.
Yeah. I mean, that's especially with kids. My daughter, because my wife wants to stop her. And I'm like, she's not going to stop. She's eventually going to smash her head into the wall and then learn it, unfortunately. Hopefully not too hard. This is another question that I find it interesting too, because of, I think, the way society is set up and everything seems to be about money and you go on Instagram, apparently everyone can have nice cars and travels and private jets. I don't know who these people are, but what is Chris, your personal definition of success?
Oh, great question. I don't know yet, because that's a great question, Hisham.
Okay. I didn't
not
mean to
one that
stump
I've
you, but
pondered too much, but I'll tell you what popped in my head when you said, what's your definition of success? I'm a huge fan of Matthew McConaughey. I think he's a phenomenal speaker and just great insights. Back in one of his speeches, he talks about, his hero. Who is his hero? His hero is him 10 years from now. And he knows that he will never, ever reach that level, but it's something for him to continue to strive for, continue to achieve for. And so when you ask me the question of what is success, my thought was, have I achieved success yet? Right? Is success so far out here that I continually am trying to achieve that? Might be the case, right? So putting a definition on what my success is, I think many people would describe success. Chris, you're successful. Well, that's your opinion, right? Because what is my success? And I don't know that I've hit my success yet. And I only say that because I'm happy, but I still want to do more. And so for me to be fully achieve everything I would like, my success has not been defined yet.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. It's probably one of those things that it's like the leadership. You never maybe really achieve it.
Exactly.
Something to strive for. I was going to ask you, if somebody made a movie about your career, who would play you?
Matthew.
Sounds like it's Matthew McConaughey. Yeah. Now, this is another thing I'd like to carry forward. So I asked the previous guest, which happens to be Tash Durkins, to ask a question to the next guest. So her question was, tell me about your worst day as a leader and what you learned from it. Obviously, you can generalize it about your leadership style. It doesn't have to be about a specific situation.
Worst day as a leader. I can tell you the place and I can tell you the date. I can remember it. It was a defining moment in my career. It was during my first job as a supervisor. And it wasn't one single incident. It was being caught up in the multiple incidents that led to the actual event. Gentlemen, most of these people, if not all of them, are still alive, so I won't mention any names. But I was in a leadership position at the time, supervisor, brand new to it. Again, I talked about it earlier. What does most people think, which is the one piece of information I give to everyone. Because you're a supervisor today, doesn't mean, and you have the authority, doesn't mean you have all the knowledge, and doesn't mean you have to, right? And so I was in that mindset, right? Brand new as a as a supervisor. And so it was a lot of mistakes that led myself and a few others to an incident that I'm not so proud of that I participated in as a leader, right? Um, and it was really bypassing some of the leadership change. It was making some complaints that should have been handled at a much lower level. So, it was a multitude of things. But it still sticks with me today as something, you asked that. It goes back to the other question. Obviously I know the outcome. I know what I did and didn't like about it. So if I was to change something, it would probably be changing that, but I learned a lot from it. So, it was a good opportunity.
Yeah, and that's great. And I think people sounds like it's a really good question from her, because she knows everybody's gone through that, right? I mean, one way, for some people it could be worse than others, or some people maybe have multiple of those days potentially, but there's a few that probably always stand out, right?
Yeah.
There's like, man, that sticks with you. Have just a couple more, if you have a couple more minutes here. I'm asking you a question, but I'm wondering what is one question, because you've been interviewed, I've seen some of your YouTube and stuff. What is some question you're like, man, I wish somebody would ask me this, like, given either your role or your experience?
So honestly, love the podcast, love the exchange that we've been having. Most of my interviews are obviously around the FAA side of things, the ATO, and what we're doing from a training perspective. I shared early on, I love leadership. I love the conversation. I love talking about it. I love discipline. I love fitness. I love all this stuff. And so having the opportunity just to have a conversation about something that I also enjoy. I've loved the podcast.
Thank you.
Love the conversation, just the back and forth. And you've been sharing a lot of insightful pieces as well too. Again, you're here interviewing me, but I've learned quite a bit just from listening to you and some of the things that you pointed out. So,
thank you. Yeah, I'm fascinated by people. This doesn't have to be about, I am interested by leadership, but it's just by people. So I think everyone has their unique experience and journey and lessons learned and vision. So, you're still really young. I think you've got, a while to go, but you're at a point where you could give some insights to the future leaders, or today's leaders that are becoming future leaders. What is some stuff you would tell them to try to help them out and push them along the right path?
Again, I'd go back to being transparent, be honest, build relationships, build trust, because if you don't have trust, you're not going to have anything, right? John Maxwell, another great person, love one of his quotes, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Again, you got to live that, right? So don't walk in that I know everything. I absolutely didn't when I walked into the role I'm in now, but I'm a question asker anyway. So it's always one of the things I prompt everyone with. Hey, I'm asking questions, not because I don't trust you, but I'm asking questions because that's how I learn, right? And you just got to be honest with people. I mean, I don't walk into any job with any motives. I don't walk into any job with I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. I was given a task when I stepped into this role to combine two organizations. I had in my mind what Chris Wilbanks maybe thought this looked like. And I shared this not long ago. Someone asked me, what was your vision? I said, well, I didn't have a vision because I didn't know enough to have a vision of what the organization looked like. I had my thoughts of some things that needed to change, but I quickly put together a team of experts, me not being one of those, and said, you guys tell me what this looks like, right? And we involved the entire workforce. Everyone had an opportunity to buy in and talk about what this looked like. But, and I did that from the perspective of, I don't know, right? And that's okay. I think that it's being humble, it's being true, it's letting people know that I don't know everything. So again, back to what I said earlier, it's about being humble, stay human. There is no title that you were given that puts you all of a sudden with superior knowledge, makes you better than anyone else. The only thing that it does is it gives you authority over them, which absolutely means nothing at the end of the day. Authority will last for a little while. That's it. You will get no return on investment exercising authority.
I agree. And I think people, when someone's put in a leadership title or role, I think they immediately think, what can they do for me? And that's the point of it.
Correct.
We better have some answers for that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I will ask you at the end of this, but if you were to create a question for the next guest, so give that just a thought. I want to do a quick rapid fire if you got a second here.
Yep.
You already told me, but I want to know why your favorite time of day to run is
morning.
at like 4 a.m.?
No, a little bit later than
5,
that.
okay.
I try to hit the road no later than 5:45, 6. Yeah.
Okay. Hardest race you've ever finished?
I ran an ultra marathon in Bryce Canyon, and the reason it was the hardest is because I live on the East Coast, well below 8,000 feet. This entire race was ran above 8,000 feet.
Wow.
It was 34 miles. Beautiful scenery, but yeah, it was a little tough. The altitude was a butt kicker.
I wouldn't be able to see, like, I'd be like leaning down the whole time, but all right, that's awesome. Book, quote, or idea that influenced how you lead.
Gosh, I probably couldn't put my finger on one book. I'm a huge Jocko Willett fan. I think Extreme Ownership, phenomenal book. I don't know that I could quote specifically anything in there. I love the principles that he talks about. Whether you're in the military or not, that book, he takes military experiences and he turns them into how those can be applied anywhere. So great book. Got many other. I just shared a list with somebody the other day, asked for a list of books, and I think I stopped.
Share it with me.
I think I stopped at about 18. I was like, I
wow,
got more
okay.
if you want them,
Okay.
right? So,
Nice.
there's plenty out there. The quote would probably be, I say it all the time, the John Maxwell quote, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's, I don't know for sure if that's attributed to John Maxwell. It's in one of his books. So that's why I attribute it to him.
That's awesome. What is your leadership superpower?
I would say influence.
Influence? All right. Awesome. You told me about your pre-run, it's coffee and, so we already.
Pre-workout. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. You got the pre-workout and the protein. Yep.
Now, one thing that you're still working on to improve yourself.
Working on many things, but discipline, because you can't look, again, we talked about it earlier. Things can creep in, life happens, we're going through a lot right now. So there's always, you leave a little crack for something to break one of those habits. It seems to sneak in much easier than you can get it back out. Right. So again, it's always working on trying to be disciplined, and it's a mental thing. It's challenge yourself. Have that little conversation with yourself. Oh, you're going to let that win, right? So now you just
in the morning.
Right?
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
Hey, man, that's great. All right. So if you have a question for the next guest,
depends on who the next guest is. Did they get that information? Right?
It might be. They did not, and I'm not going to tell you.
No, don't tell me.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you.
Kidding.
Plus, they may cancel on me.
Yeah, right. So I would say, if you were to give one piece of advice to a brand new leader, what would that be?
Love it. I love that. Yeah, I like this new thing. Well, Chris, thank you, for joining, sharing your vision, your discipline, your leadership thoughts. I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy person, so thank you very much.
Honored, and thank you for having me.
This is Kobek on Air. CEO and co-founder Hisham Jalil built a workplace that people trust. Now he's interviewing other people-first leaders to explore what shapes them.